You're listening to the Adventurous Weirdos podcast by WatcherDM. Learn more at WatcherDM.com or come join our Patreon at patreon.com/WatcherDM. Stay weird. Hi!
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing, Austin?
I'm good, Gabriel, and I see we have Andrew with us today.
Yeah, hey, so welcome to the Adventurous Weirdos podcast. I'm Gabriel Hernandez. That's Austin Holm over there. And this is the often spoken about but rarely seen, a rare Andrew Ferguson has appeared. And so, yeah, we're going to do our podcast today with all three of us, the founding original nerds of Questgiver Games Ltd. And WatcherDM. So, yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
So, yeah, man, how's your week been?
Me and you. It's been cold. It's Canada. It's not Play Canada here. It's real Canada.
I'm in Play Canada. Cold. It's just wet.
Vancouver is pretend Canada. It's great. I love it. Real Canada is very cold.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
well,
how are you guys down there?
How are we holding up? How's life? How's things for you?
Life's been really good for me. Yeah. I'm living the dream right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing lots of theater work.
Doing a tiny amount of theater adjacent work. Yeah.
That's my dream. I just want to do something very manageable in a field I love.
I want to do a tiny amount of work in something that I am really passionate about. Cool. Yeah. So I guess we're going to talk today. We had a couple of things on the agenda that we wanted to talk about. But one of the things that we wanted to mention is the 28th of November is Trans Day of Remembrance. And I guess it was our fortune, kind of our opportunity, and definitely one of the things we feel very good about was submitting our kind of collected works at the time to the Trans Rights Florida bundle, which was a bundle that went to generate donations for the trans rights in Florida. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it hit around 300,000. Double check this here.
Raised a lot of money. I remember if you pretend that every game brought in an equal amount of money, our share of it was about 19,000. I mean, I think most people probably bought it because they wanted to play Thirsty Sword Lesbians or Fund a Good Cause, or both. But yeah, it was a lot of dough involved in that. And I think at this point, honestly, if somebody has read our work, there's probably a good at least 80% chance that they're reading it because they wanted to support that cause and they got it through that venue.
And in fact, I think that's kind of the feedback that we've gotten is we've had more people reach out to us and interact with us through having downloaded our content from the Trans Rights bundle than kind of almost anywhere else. I think the one exception to that being the one-page RPG cycle, like the game jam that we did. And the TTRPG for Trans Rights in Florida bundle was 2023. It was in April 2023, and raised $283,976 out of a $300,000 goal, with 31,669 contributors. Very nice, trans rights. Fundraising goals smashed. They went from 50,000 to 100,000 to 250,000, and we smashed all those goals.
Nice.
And it was a lot of fun getting to be involved in something where we just kind of took everything that we had and we're like, here, this is our community. These are the people we want to ally with. This is where we'd like to spread our love. It's been kind of, it just pays off in so many ways, unexpected ways. One of them being that one of our kind of seminal products, actually a pocket. We did the Pocket Quest Jam with Drive-Thru RPG in 2022 and created Camp Kingdom Come,
Right.
which was then played in an actual play by the Queer Experience. If you
Yes.
don't know the Queer Experience, go check out Queer XP on Twitter. I know they're everywhere else as well. I'll try and put their
That's
links
where
in the
I
show
yell at
notes.
them on Twitter, so that's
Yeah.
the spot to go, I think.
Yeah. But super fun story there. They reached out to us before the game and we're like, hey, we have some questions, like, can we get clarification on some rules and how we should, modify things to play better for online, because Camp Kingdom Come has a very kind of
It's meant to be played at a camp, really.
right. It weird that we designed a Bible camp game to work so well at a Bible camp, when I think we all knew that nobody at Bible camp was ever going to touch this thing.
Don't get caught with it at Bible camp.
Do not get
You'll
caught
get
with
in
this
trouble.
game at Bible camp.
Yeah.
That does not mean don't bring it to Bible camp. Definitely bring it to
No,
Bible camp.
don't get
Just
caught.
don't get
Yeah.
caught.
Hide it in the camp. That's how I used to do it. I mean, wait. Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, not to pull back a little bit, but just like the stuff going on in Florida at that time, and still a little bit, is I think for me it's really proof positive that, like, they say, like, you always hear people being like, oh, look, as long as somebody isn't free, we're all in chains type of thing, and like that's a great sentiment, but it's very rare that I think you see it played out as explicitly as it has in Florida over the last couple of years, where like that the state has just decided that they don't need to abide by other states' custody decisions. They've decided that it's totally fine to have teachers inspect student athletes' genitals. It's, I don't care if you're trans or if I'm a straight white dad. It fucking freaks me out, And they say that politics in Canada, it's usually only about 10 years behind politics in the states. So it's a really, really important thing, I think, for all of us to take a stand and
let's
to
hope we
say,
let's hope we
sorry.
skip this decade, because this last
Yeah,
decade
right.
of politics in America has been
Well, I mean, we're already like for the last 2 months they've had anti-Soji protests, like um fortunately have not had much traction, but like still, you know.
it's somehow there's MAGA Republicans in Canada. Like, how? Why? what is going on there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about? So one of the things we want to talk about, and I'm hoping that Austin will come back on during this conversation, but Austin often praises you as being one of the players he enjoys the most at having at a table, and for reasons, right? Like, there's good players, and then there's less good players, and he kind of puts you in the pile of, like, not only is Andrew a good player, but he makes other players good too. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what you think makes a player a good player, and how like what are your tips and tricks? How do you do what you do in terms of making making everybody at a table engage a little bit more?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I come at that from the world of theater and improv, right? That like I do have the benefit of having some training with all that stuff, but there are some tips that, like, whether it's for an improv stage or for a D&D game, right? Is one of the easiest ones is yes and energy, which is kind of like that you don't say no in an improv. If somebody has an idea, you're going to roll with it, right? So
Yeah.
you don't, if your DM seems to be guiding you down a road, you're going to roll with that. And if your player wants to derail things a little bit, like your fellow players want to take it in a different direction, you support them in that and be like, yeah, like, unless I have a really strong reason that I should resist something, in which case I'm gonna try to be game for whatever's going on, and
That's
then
fair.
see if there's some way that I can contribute to make it even to escalate it, maybe.
Right. I think that's part of the secret sauce that they don't really talk about is yes and, but escalate.
Yeah,
Like
because that's the
make it,
and.
yeah,
Like say yes, but then you need to know what and is, right?
right,
Like in a game of the actual improv game, yes and you might be like, oh, I'm going to buy a hat. Yes, and it's going to be a silly hat. Then someone else might be like, yes, and there's a law against silly hats, right?
right.
So just to like the next thing can't just be like
Yes,
unrelated.
and the law says anyone caught wearing a silly hat has to die.
Yeah.
And yes,
Yes,
and
and the
they
method
must
of
die. The
execution
method
is
of execution is
ridiculous, and
drowned by fish.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
See how fast we were.
yeah, because you're just like you're not saying you don't say drown by fish. That's stupid. I don't want to. No,
Yeah.
can we make it drown by foxes? Because like
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, maybe drown by foxes is better, but the idea is already on the table.
Drowned
so
by
you're going
fish
with it.
and foxes.
Yeah, why not?
The foxes hold you down while the fish do the actual throat jam.
It's also, I mean, I try to make characters who support that kind of thing. Like, I don't usually make loners and like, like edgelordy kind of like, oh, I work alone, right? And like, if I do
Yeah.
that, they need to have still a reason to be like, I'm going along with what the party wants to do.
So it even starts at character creation then, and I think that's an interesting thing to do. Now, how often would you say do you find yourself creating a character with the rest of the party versus creating a character in isolation?
Right. Yeah. I mean, most of our games, right? I kind of want to know what other people are making to some degree. I like when we get to make characters all together because then we're designing a group, right? We're like, oh no, this is, if like the Ninja Turtles creators had been 4 different people, each being like, okay, like come up with a cool comic book series, you would have gotten one Ninja Turtle and like one Samurai Rabbit and like, right?
That's true. That's true. It wouldn't have been the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
It would have been a bunch of weird mutant animals who happen to know different martial arts.
Yeah.
Maybe. In New
If you're
York, in a
lucky.
New York
Or it's like,
sewer.
you'd have like a hard-boiled detective and a superhero and right?
Yeah.
And like that's, that can be fun to play in, right? But
Sure, absolutely.
when it comes to like making characters together as a group means you can really be like, oh yeah, and I'll be your brother, right? And that's how we
Right.
know each other.
That's something that I wanted to mention too. It's like one of the ways that a GM can encourage that kind of good player hygiene, we'll call it. Hey Austin, welcome back. I hope we can't hear you if you've been talking. So we can hear you.
I haven't said anything.
There you are.
I think your internet might be.
Hi.
Yeah, I think your internet's about as choppy as can be right now. So you might be on snowdrift, but enjoy the conversation while we can.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite stories to tell is back when I ran the Road to Valhalla in California in 2018, which was supposed to be a one-shot. And I had just pitched it to the group of players over text. I had like 3 different things that they could do. And one of them was a group of Vikings finds themselves at sea on their way to Valhalla. A punchy one line, knock it out. They all come the next day, and I'm like, okay, it's character creation time. Let's start making our characters. And so everybody starts making their characters. And while they were making their characters, I was asking each of them, well, what is your character? What do they do in the village? Like you all live in a Viking village together. So who are you to each other? And how do you know each other? And of course, it turns out the vast majority of them were related. I think one of them was the uncle. So like Styr Odinson was like a noble, kind of a reluctant noble. He was a bit of a dick, warlock. And then like Bjork Odinson was like his uncle and was protecting him, was like kind of protective of his nephew. And then like his cousin Astrid was like the blonde, buxom bard. And then like his other cousin Tiri was like the kind of snaggle-toothed, rogue. And as they were making their characters, basically it was like, okay, well, around the campfire, how do you interact with each other? And of course, Astrid tells all these jokes and is really boisterous and tries to get attention. And so the way that I rolled that out was I said, okay, well, so to your face, people of the village call you Astrid the Beautiful. But behind your back, they call you Astrid the Loud. And that was kind of the way that we integrated that into the character creation process. Was there was what people called you to your face, and then there was what people called you behind your back. And so you kind of knew as a character what you were going to be interacting with and what you could bring to the table in terms of, defying those expectations or incorporating them. And it really made the party, by the time we got to You Are on a Boat, everybody was so integrated with each other's shit that alliances had already formed, deep friendships, years worth of deep friendships had already accumulated. And that was literally like that first hour of character creation in session 0.
Well, and that's what so that's in now a couple of the drafts that I've got of upcoming adventures. The game of that you do for making characters already know each other, right?
What's the
is you're sitting at the tavern. You've all come. You get to describe your local tavern if it's going to be the kind of game where the players get to make up some stuff about the town they're in and stuff like that, right? And why your particular table is your favorite, right? But first I say that it's been X amount of time since your first adventure together, and let's go around the table and everybody share some details about that first adventure.
Right.
And then I'll ask some prompting questions as well that can be like, on that adventure, oh God, I had the table for this elsewhere, but on that adventure, you nearly died.
Right.
Which person saved your life? And then
how?
I might ask the other person how. Right. So it might be like, who
split
here,
the question, split the creative prompt.
Who here saved your life? And they'll be like, oh, it was this person. And they'll be like, okay. And I might ask that person how, right? And I might say, yeah, how did they do it? And then ask the other person who saved them.
No, I'm just grabbing more sweet.
Okay, I see. There's one more here. I think. Go ask the other person who saved them. What did you have to give up to do that, right?
Right.
Or what went wrong?
What was the cost?
Yeah. Especially if they seem to be struggling coming up with it on their own. If the players just launch into oh, we were fighting a minotaur and we were in a maze and I did this and you did, oh, no, I did, right? If they're all playing immediately, don't help, just do it. But if they're having a hard time, just start asking some things of you lost a really important piece of equipment. What was it and how did you lose it? Right?
So Austin, this all pitched off of, I was telling Andrew about how much you gush about his playing and him as a player having him at the table. And so, we were talking about what makes a good player. How can players improve their kind of, I don't know, performance per se, but their contribution to the fun of the table.
Yeah. Huh. Well, it's interesting that you guys are talking about backstories because for me, I think backstories can be a bit of a there's a little part of me dies whenever anybody's like, here's my 8-page backstory I wrote. I'm just like, oh man, homework. When you do it at the table like that, I think that sounds really, really cool, right? And one thing I always try and do for my characters is I always try and give them a backstory, or doesn't have to be 8 pages, but a little bit of a philosophy or something that they like or don't like, but I try to avoid saying it. I always I want to know it so I can show it without having to tell it, right? I think that goes a long way. Just to have a really strong idea of who your character is, but don't feel like you have to tell everybody at the table. Oh, no. You don't have to say, "Oh, well, Hazrat was bullied by his sisters growing up." You can just bitch about your sisters at every opportunity you get, and people will get the message.
Like you do.
That's
I like that too. Yeah.
Similarly, right, is with Zorgos, right? When I made that character, was pretty intentional about not telling people what the story was, or even that he's a warlock. What is people would be like, "What class are you playing? What class are you playing?" Oh, Zorgos, he is of the highest class. He is an aristocrat, right?
Class doesn't even describe Zorgos.
Yeah, and just just showing who he is as a sort of a jovial person who wants to party and have a good time no matter what. And he doesn't like tell everybody that he has magic from a genie. That's a shush. He doesn't even see it as like a class. It's just like, this is my friend the genie, and I have some powers because I'm buddies with
This is
him.
my clubbing partner, the
Yeah.
genie.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's not even that he like wants to hide that he has a patron. It's just that he doesn't see it as a pact. He sees it just as a friendship bond.
And I think that's actually one of the that's another interesting like way to approach character design that can add to the world building without it being um gamey, as like or we did kind of the same thing with Stare, right? Where he was a noble, but he was only really a noble because his father's father had created a pact to give him and his family magic down the line.
Yeah.
And so like it was not like he just knew the things to do. He didn't really understand the obligation involved, but he knew kind of how to keep power, and so his relationship with that power was tense. He didn't like being a noble. He didn't like being more important than everyone else. He didn't like any of those things because he was treated differently. And so, yeah, he was kind of stingy. He was nasty about it and stingy about using his magic, which I think was an interesting way to play out the reality is of what a character like if you're going to resent your privilege like that, do so.
Well, and like I think this when it comes to like being good players and stuff, right? For that, Alhazarad's a really good example from like, yeah, he has this noble background. He has some parts of himself that he hides and some parts that he tells everybody about and some parts that he brags about, right? But largely it's also like what's really fun about playing in a party with him is he is a leader because he wants to feel important. That doesn't necessarily mean he has like always the greatest plan. It
Often quite the
Yeah.
opposite.
It's just that he always thinks he does. And so when you have a character who's like, I'm really agreeable and I want to like go along with whatever the party is doing, like I tend to make like Bob is up for most things. He kind of wants the party to like be decent folk, but
he's also looking for compensation.
yeah, as long as they're getting paid, then
Right.
like cool, right? Do what the boss says. And then like,
I think it's
Krug the same, right?
Mm.
Sorry.
I think what you're kind of saying is like it's really important that everybody be on the same page, and it's important that whatever character you're bringing on the table can get on a couple different pages. Like I feel like we've done a couple adventures where it's been like, yeah, like Al Hazard, somebody was rude to him at a party, and he's gonna go settle the score, and he's got the boys involved, and that's how it's gonna go. But we've also done some where it's like, somebody needs rescuing, and it's like, okay, well, I'm playing a lawful evil character. Why would my lawful evil character go rescue somebody? Well, because he wants to be seen as a hero. He wants the accolades of the common folk or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like having Bob be equally at home as a mercenary, or as I think we made him a saint at one point. He became Saint Bob.
Oh, he's still Saint Bob.
I know he is, yeah. Like I feel like having a character that can do a couple different things without sacrificing their kind of core identity is really, really nice to bring to the table, because you're never put in a situation where you're like, oh, my character wouldn't go on this adventure, which is just the death of game. Like,
Yeah. I think that's really interesting too. It's one of the things that we embraced right away, and I almost never heard of another group just being like, "Oh yeah, this is fine." Is I played a lawful evil character. You're almost level 13 now or something. You guys are like way up there.
Yeah,
You've been playing a lawful evil character in a largely good-ish group of adventurers for up on 2.5, 3 years now.
You're married. I'm sure Krug is chaotic good, right? Your spouse in game is the exact opposite of your alignment, which is why you make up for each other's like, you complete each other that way. But like, yeah, Bob is lawful neutral, so as long as we agree on the lawfulness of it, right?
Well, and I think like that's kind of what I love about the group of players that we have. What everybody's been able to do with that idea is that sometimes the guy who's known as the hero got that position because he wanted to be seen as a hero, not because he cared about
Yeah.
saving anybody, not because so like you can get all the accolades without ever once having the intention of doing the right thing. That's an evil act. And I don't think people
Yeah.
see that way. I think like, when you look at how, in fact, even there was an article recently I was reading about how Gary Gygax on some post on Reddit, some forum post years ago was talking about how capital punishment is a lawful act.
It is where it is lawful.
It is where
Yeah.
it is lawful, but his argument was that lawful good characters would commit capital punishment in a world where the law had capital punishment. And he just was like, that's just how it is. And I think that like the perception of medieval morality as being lawful good holds that. Like that's true in the medieval sense. But I don't think that like
Yeah.
I don't think that would pass muster today. Like nobody would say, "Oh yeah, capital punishment is a totally good act," despite it being lawful. In fact, capital
Well,
punishment
there
is
are
kind of the definition of
oh,
lawful evil. What's
yeah.
that?
I mean, I would say so definitely, but there are people out there. I mean, people who vote feel differently.
Well, sure, but I think that's the thing. It's like people who are voting out there aren't voting on alignment.
Yeah.
Why not? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we just
Can we
give?
have
Can
the
we?
lawful neutral
Can we
political
just
party?
stat out all the politicians and have them rock their alignment like top of the chart? Is like, oh no, like
Yeah.
all these sons of bitches are lawful evil.
Like this is the I don't think you're gonna. I mean, there are some chaotic politicians for sure, um, but you're gonna get
For
mostly
Chaotic neutral.
people who are like campaigning on lawfulness,
Right.
right? Even if they're not, if they're much more like, look, I'm neutral evil, and like,
Yeah.
you know,
Chaotic stupid.
like, but I'm gonna pretend I'm lawful evil so I can get elected.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe even pretend I'm lawful neutral. Like,
All right. Sorry for bringing up politics so many times this episode. It's not our normal fare, but it feels like
I'm
it's
here.
in the air right now. Cool.
yeah,
Well,
so there.
did we have anything else we wanted to cover in terms of player, like how to be a punchy good player? I know there's like kind of yes anding. We're talking about going along with the premise, like the
Yeah.
GM is kind of setting a thing. Encouraging your party mates to go along with the thing is usually a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
And that's also like giving some space for like not everybody is an improver. Not everybody is the one who wants to be like Austin and I like to talk a lot during the game.
I think all three of us
Yeah.
are
But
burdened with the
that's why
desire to speak.
like
We
yeah.
have these
Um
discerning voices.
so when I notice that like Krug hasn't had anything to say in a while, I'll like try to make Bob interact with Krug uh more directly and like be like, yeah, what do you think about this player who's been a little quiet this session, right?
Yeah.
Um and not do that too much because like if I sense that someone's like, oh, actually I'm being quiet because I don't really feel like speaking much, like, throw them a ball now and then just to be like, you're still in the game.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's another interesting. I think that's a really what you're saying underneath that. I think, if I may, is that while it is largely the GM's job to spotlight, it is not only like it.
Yeah, the
It
players
can be
can-
yours as a player by you engaging with another player's character. You're spotlighting, and that is even better than
Yeah.
a GM spotlighting. So GM's going to ask generic world questions, like the world interacting with the player, or him asking about the player's, desires or whatever. Whereas your character has the capacity to kind of reach through the veil and have the character interact directly with the other character and get those.
And that kind of makes it from like when it's the GM who's like when I'm doing GM and I find like, okay, I'm trying to spotlight everybody, it often becomes like a series of main characters who are getting their turn. Yes, please. And when I'm when the players start to do that with each other, it's like, okay, now it feels like an ensemble cast. Like,
Yeah.
right?
That's interesting. I was just thinking about that. I've been playing Lamentations online with a different group recently. I just played 4 games over the last 2 weeks or whatever. But like it's really interesting in each of these sessions because it's all just strangers who met online. there is a point where it kind of goes between like 6 people interacting with one GM to 7 people playing a game together.
Yeah.
And like that kind of when it ticks over like that, that's when people start relaxing and having fun and getting more character stuff going on, or even just feeling like they can suggest ridiculous schemes like like, oh, I want to cast stone to flesh on the foundation of this house, like those kinds of
Yeah.
like madcap things that you talk about after the session.
Well, and
Those
like
come when you feel comfortable with
those
the
are
GM.
also like because I said earlier like oh good players going to go along with what the DM seems to want. If the DM's like oh there's a creepy mine you have to and you're walking past it, they're going to be like let's investigate instead of like let's leave that the fuck alone. But at the same time, like sometimes when Austin's like, oh, somebody was rude to Alhazarad, and now Alhazarad needs to spend the next 40 minutes like getting the perfect revenge, I can just be like, oh, dungeon will be next week.
That's
We're
true.
like we'll get to that dungeon later. Right now we gotta settle a score.
And being a good GM, it's good to like be able to set aside your content and let the players kind of lead
Yeah.
the
If they've got
lead the
somewhere they
way.
want to take it, be like, yes, players guide the
And
experience.
if your players ever say, I need to take the perfect revenge against your NPC that did very little other than insult them, let that shit ride to the conclusion because they will do some fucked up shit and it's
Yeah.
going to be worth it. Um,
Yeah.
Although talking about following the GM's premise, I I wanted to actually talk to you about it because one of the adventures that you designed, which I think is largely one of our favorite adventures. I know it's Austin speaks highly of it often. The Debutante is one where there's kind of a trap at the beginning for players who are just playing their character to really fuck it up for the kind of GM and for the rest of the party in that you're presented with an ethical vampire. And if I was playing a paladin of the god of life or something and I
Yeah.
roll into that adventure, the chances that I'm like I could see that being a really hard sell as a player to say like, well, my character's just going to hear this vampire out and see how this
Yeah.
goes instead of seeing that vampire as a being of pure evil.
Yeah.
And I love the gray space. I love that the fact that we're painting in that with that kind of a brush where it's like there's two evils here. There is a lesser evil,
Yeah.
and she's kind of offering like a opportunity to throw a party first off, but then second off, she's also offering a kind of a legitimate agreement where you get the power of an evil to protect what is effectively the harmonized good of a population.
Yeah.
And that's again very very strange, like not common in Dungeons and Dragons adventures, I would say writ large.
No, and like I've played with people who would 100% like, oh, spooky castle going in. Creepy little girl. I'm not going to let her say a word. I'm going to try to kill her, right? Which is partly why the vampires have Misty Escape. And if they get close to dropped too quickly, she can just be like, okay, you went hostile on her. She is leaving.
Right.
And she is going to come back more powerful. And we're going to play this game the other way, where you're hunting a vampire
Right.
for the witches you don't know are witches, right?
Right.
Um,
And yeah, and I think that that's one of the what's beautiful about that adventure is that that's literally it's two adventures in one. You can run it with all these great social mechanics and interacting with the celebrity pigs and finding the betrayal of the witches and the succubi in the woods with that douche performer that everybody loves. Like there's some great stuff in there. Or you can literally just try and kill the vampire and like enlist the talents of all these and this cast of NPCs that you have to help you in destroying the vampire. And I think that's genius writing. So well done. But yeah, go ahead.
I just want to shout out two of my favorite things about that module is one, I think ethical vampire is a really, really great metaphor for medieval aristocracy, where it's like, ah, yeah, this guy's sucking our fucking blood, but he also protects us from like wolves and the Germans across the hill, like
the Germans who
I
wouldn't
feel
really
like,
be that upset with us if it wasn't for him. Like,
yeah, right. Um, but but I also wanted to shout out just because he's not here, Paul Brown's art for Debutante.
Paul Brown's art in
I,
general.
His art in general, yeah, yeah, you got the Spooktober shirt there. Uh, but I don't know. I think Debutante is just one of his finest, one of my favorite things he's drawn for us, or that I've seen him do, or one of my favorite things people have drawn. Period.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of all that work.
Yeah.
I
The
was very
Debutante one is a favorite, definitely.
very happy to commission that. And yeah, his he just did the art. He was art director for the Gilliman's Guide to Speed uh Kickstarter that just recently closed from Only Crits, who I guess I might as well take the time to mention them now. Where'd that box of dice go? So Only Crits is our dice partner. I'm good friends with the guys over there, and so we are now affiliated. You can get your own
You need some light
sexy. Let's get some lights up here.
Okay.
Ooh, they look pretty. Do they look pretty yet? Am I beautiful yet?
Yeah, they're pretty.
Anyway,
Gorgeous.
yeah. So some gorgeous dice, nice, coming a great selection of colors and materials. If you go to WatcherDM.com and click on Dice Partner in the menu, you can shop there, and we'll get some affiliate kickback from that. Or if you want to go get a discount, you can go to onlycrits.com, use the code WatcherDM when checking out, and they'll give you some. I'm actually not 100% sure what it is, but it'll be there. And I don't know if people know this, but Watcher DM Adventures, a bunch of our adventures, most of our 5e adventures, are actually available on onlycrits.com. And you can actually win them for free by purchasing dice, or you can purchase them directly through OnlyCrits. So, yeah, OnlyCrits has been a kind of longtime friend of the work that we've done, and we've been working together for a while now. And so, yeah, check out OnlyCrits. Coming up, they're going to have a Cyber Monday. I think they're doing a Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale. So go stock up on crazy dice, and yeah, go check out Only Crits. Tell them we said hi. Tell Eric Gabriel said hi. That's and Rory, smooch him in the face for me. I don't know. Anyway, I never do advertising stuff, so that's as much as you're going to get out of me. Now, the Debutante also leaned into non-violent resolutions, and this is something that I think Austin and I, when we were like, oh, we're getting Andrew on, we should talk to you about this, because you have a bunch of experience basically running Dungeons and Dragons for kids, and kids of a certain age, we'll say, and within a certain context.
It makes it sound like kids in their like 50s were like, I'm of a certain age. No, like actual children, yes.
Actual, and what is the age range, would you say, of the children that you have largely played with?
Yeah, so I mean, most of them were grade 3, 4, 5, kind of. A few grade 6s and 7s in there sometimes when they stuck around for a long time. The context here is that I was for 8 years an after-school care worker, and during that time, got a Dungeons and Dragons club happening. Like we started with, they just got us the starter set for D&D, and kids wanted to run it, and I was the one who knew how. So I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'll run this starter set for you. We did some older kids, some younger kids. Like I tried to run it for 5-year-olds, because they wanted to, right? They really wanted to. And
if there's one thing I know about children, they love to mimic.
I quickly
so if they see somebody else having a good time, they're going to be like, I want to do what that is. You're like, they are drinking vodka and eating bullets. What do you?
Absolutely.
You don't want to do that. It's not even really fun. It just looks like fun.
Yeah, they're so yeah, the older kids wanted to play, and actually it was more like grade sort of 2s and 3s wanted to play first, and they handled it, right? It was a group of boys. The very next day was a group of girls of the same age, had seen them having a lot of fun, and we're like, well, can we try, right? And actually that had some more like grade 3 and 4 girls in as well. And they were, again, like fine with, they didn't do the math so well, the younger ones.
Right.
I would do a lot that for them at the beginning, and when they were old enough to be able to do it themselves, I'd be like, no, nobody just tell this person the answer. Let them figure it out, because that's part of what it's teaching you, right? That's what the parents want.
Sure.
That's how you justify it as educational.
That's how you justify Dungeons and Dragons as educational,
daycare, yeah.
as it's mathematics.
Yeah. But so you can get past the math pretty easily by just do it for them, right?
Sure. Well, I think original version of the game, Dungeon Master rolled everything, and just told everybody what the results were.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
That makes
In
sense.
fact, there's documented versions of Arneson running from behind a sheet. Like he was actually like had hung a sheet and had his own table of stuff behind that the players did not see, and the players sat at another table in the same room and would talk. He was like talking to the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
He was
So
behind the curtain.
hilarious.
You did not see him.
The 5-year-olds, I didn't like. I knew they wanted to roll the big dice,
Yeah.
and I didn't care about what the dice rolls were. I would, I'd be like, oh yeah, you like okay, with the d6s for damage, just made everything as a d6 for damage, so they knew, right? And a d20 where I was like, yeah, I'm using it as a coin toss. Everything is a 10 DC,
Right.
and they wouldn't know anyway whether like why or right. But
Sure.
anyhow,
They're gonna grow up and be like, man, Dungeons and Dragons was a lot easier when I was a kid. I don't know what's going on.
like
I'm rolling for shit these days.
yeah. But yeah, so the interesting thing was boys. Group of boys wanted to play, and we're in that first. Oh, there's the stuff.
Brought to you by Splenda.
So we're in that like they're going through a cave and there's some wolves, and like Encounter says, if you got some food to give the wolves, you can try to tame them, and it's a DC this. If you I was like, it was that right in there, but the boys were just like, wolves, kill them.
Right.
The girls who played the next day because they saw it and looked like fun were like, oh, pets, right? And I was like, okay, cool.
Doggies.
So like, this is great. Some of these kids want to do non-violent solutions, right? And you get rewarded for that by having some wolves come and help you out with the rest of the dungeon, right?
Right.
Only then the girls got to the area where there's a bunch of goblins, and they're like, oh, like are there girl goblins and boy goblins? Like, yeah, of course there are. There's right. It's like village of goblins, right? And like so they're like old people and babies. I was like, yeah, I guess there's old people, there's babies, there's everything. Like, we grab one of the babies and we threaten it. Like, we say we're gonna kill their baby if they don't, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, for the game of adults, I'd be like, goblins don't give a shit about their babies. They'll make 5 more tomorrow. Like, maybe they're gonna be like, yeah, fuck it, who cares, right? But with a game of kids, we're not gonna have infanticide happen. So yeah,
but that's what the kids want.
Yeah. Well, no, the kids want a hostage. And
that's fair.
That's why, like, they left that goblin cave without facing the bugbear or anything. They just like they were like, yeah, you tell the goblins like stop raiding anybody on the
or we'll come murder your kid.
Or we'll kill and we're taking the kid with us. Like, this kid dies.
They literally kidnapped a kid.
Yeah. And then for the rest of the campaign, I was like, I was like, okay, put the starter set away. We now play the game where y'all are like traveling around, having adventures, trying to get rich, but you also have this goblin mom who wants her baby back.
Yeah.
And will go to any length to get it. So she's like teaming up with big bad evil guys who are like bolstering her power, or she's like, yeah, you got to get these adventurers for me. So like, there's a bounty on them.
Within the world of the goblins,
the goblin mom is like, yeah, she keeps showing up over and over again, and they will, they fight her. But I have this kind of rule for some big bad evil guys where if you drop them to 0 HP, they don't die. They take a permanent injury that they'll remember you by, and they escape and swear vengeance on you, and then we get to see them again later. It's like only when the story says it's a good time for them to die is it a good time to die.
Right.
0 HP means you won. Doesn't mean they died.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's very pro wrestling. I like that.
It's very what now?
It's very pro wrestling. It's
WWF. Absolutely. It's like it should be a soap opera to some degree, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that's a good inspiration. Yeah, I think a lot of people. That actually reminds me. One of Alicia's friend that I got to play with a couple of times, Jazz. He played a wrestler guy. He wasn't a wrestler guy, but he was just like, he played that like, it was like Macho Man.
Oh, nice.
But it was something else. It was so good though. He's just, and what a fun archetype to just like, you always get your catchphrase. Yeah, you always get your catchphrase.
Yeah.
You always, you're showing off, you're showboating, you're talking shit about the enemies. It's just such a great
one like that. Scorcho.
Scorcho was very much a showman as well. It's a great prototype for a character. if you're looking to make a new character. Cool. Well, let's. I think we're running up on some time here. Let's talk about a couple other things. One of the things that we didn't get to, but I wanted to talk about was, and this kind of, I think this kind of plays into like not necessarily danger as nonviolence can also mean the environment is hostile and will kill you, right? Does that, I think, is kind of in many ways a more interesting story to tell.
Yeah.
While it's, I mean, obviously there's interesting stories to be had in what does one group of people want to kill other group of people, right? Like violence has its place in the danger scape. I think one of the cool things about the universe as it actually is that no, the universe would kill you and grind you out with no provocation and literally no reason at all. And finding the scenarios and the world spaces and the exploration spaces where that can be true and can be story storied or narrative, I think is a really, really interesting one. I've been watching The Expanse lately. In fact, we just finished The Expanse, and as a sci-fi show with kind of a hard science background to it, I was so amazed at how many times I think one of the main characters, like spoilers for Expanse season 6, and like the end, I guess. But one of the characters dies from like an embolism caused by burning too hard in like when you flip and burn to stop the craft.
It's too much cheese.
And it's like it could happen. The guy says he's like, if this could happen to literally any one of us. It's a risk we take every time we do one of these. And it's just like it just happened, like boom. And it was like, and Alicia and I were both just like, what happened? And like in the next scene, they're like, yeah, he died of an embolism. It happens. And you're like, man, that's good writing, bold writing that you would put that in on a main character who's been with us for 6 seasons.
Yep.
And just be like, no, that's how space works. You just die sometimes.
Well, and that's like, I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a similar, like, Buffy's mom dies of just brain cancer, and that sucked.
Yeah.
And there was nothing they could, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not, that's the environment as well,
to an
degree.
extent. I think disease has its own characteristic, but it is a good, like, I think one of the cool things that we've used in one of our Troika adventures is the swamps of Puppets of Beagle Mouse cause disease. If you spend too much time there, you are almost guaranteed to catch the fen fever. And Alicia and I were talking about like jungle rot. If your adventurers are running around with wet socks all the time, the chances that their feet are not rotting to nubs is pretty low. But then even just we were playing Tears of the Kingdom. You're running around in the desert, and when it's too hot, you're cooking. You're too hot. You're taking damage from it. When you get too close to lava, you're taking damage from it. When you're out in the cold, you're taking damage from it. The dying of exposure is the first thing a human will do. You won't die if nothing else happens, you are more likely to die of exposure than thirst or hunger. Like,
and I mean, you did that in Pixels and Pagans a little bit with when we went to the desert times to fight that dragon, right?
Yep.
And you and I talked about, we were like, well, wait, Bob wears full plate. How does that, like, no, Bob does not wear full plate in the desert. Bob takes that the fuck off.
Yeah, nobody wears full plate in the desert. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a DM, it's a rich field to explore what it means to be within your world and have those things have an impact on the mechanics and the narrative of the characters, because that's kind of where you get the feel that you get with something like Lord of the Rings, where people talk about Lord of the Rings as the world is a character. Middle Earth is very much a character. And so that exploration of the world and experiencing those dangers firsthand and having them really impact the characters gives each of those places their own base and their own voice. And I think that's such a powerful tool for a DM to have. And what's cool about it is you can grab an off the shelf campaign setting like Dragonlance or even Forgotten Realms, and all the stuff is right there. You can just add that character directly to it and bring those places to life in ways that they're maybe not so much in the adventures.
I mean, like when it comes to that, sorry, that just made me think back to the non-violent solutions. And I'm like, we get disappointed in most media when we see violent solutions at the end of something. Like,
Sure.
people critique the hell out of Man of Steel because all these other Superman movies, he's like, "Oh, I'll throw you into the Phantom Zone," and this one, he's like, "I'll snap your fucking neck."
Right.
Like,
Well, that's because the ideal good guy doesn't kill people.
yeah,
He just imprisons them, right? That's kind of like that flies in that whole like, is it lawful? Is it a good act to commit capital punishment if it's by the law lawful good? And no, it's not. It's lawful evil to commit capital punishment.
but like, yeah, it shows that like even in a big campaign, like a lot of the times you want thing to finish, not necessarily like the players want a big fight.
You
But
want
that doesn't mean
resolution.
that, yeah, you want a resolution that isn't just like, well, we killed that guy and now he's dead.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting as challenges go. I think in a certain way, environmental challenges also take some tools away from the DM. Like if I'm running a combat, sometimes there's a little bit of a thing where you just get to a moment where you're like, oh, geez, like if this ogre hits the wizard, then the wizard's down. I could finish him off with my two goblins, and then I could put this guy by the cleric, and we could have a TPK on our hands, right? And so you're sitting there as the GM being like, okay, well, maybe the ogre doesn't take out the wizard this turn. He is mad that the fighter stabbed him in the butt last turn, so he turns around and he swings at the 18 AC fighter for a little while. You don't have that option when you're doing environment as enemy stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, did it take you 6 days of walking through the tundra to get to the dungeon? Well, luckily it's only 2 days back. It's all downhill, so you can just sled the whole way, and your two rations will get you home. Like it doesn't work. You've
Yeah.
already established the level of the threat, the danger, and like in our Lamentations game in Bar Hack, there have been a couple times where it's just like, oh, like now for the real adventure. Can you get this shit home? Can you
Oh,
get this
exactly. Like
treasure?
the last game even that we played, we were, debating
We
whether
rolled
we
in
had,
pretty desperately. I
but, like,
think we
we
were.
were debating, we were like, do we have time to rest one more time and then finish this dungeon off? Or will we even survive the Arroyo on the way back?
Right.
Like it's going to be more difficult potentially at this point to get home without that long rest. Well, not that they have long rests, but to get home without some more healing spells, like
Yeah.
than it is to even do like, yeah, I like the survival game for that reason where you're like, okay, we're not just like every day is a perfect long rest and then we're done. It's like, no, every day is brutal, and you might be going into if there is a combat, you're probably going in half burned out already because of how bad the environment is.
I had to get very used to in the Lamentations game rolling in with less than full hit points. We get very used to the idea of rolling in with an imperfect solution. And I think that that's one of the things that, OSR touts is it's deadly, right? It's more deadly than 5e. And I think that's absolutely true. It's obvious and true. But actually, I was having this conversation with Tess and Ben last night because they're both big OSR players, obviously, play Tunnels and Trolls, and I think they're starting up a game of Warlock pretty soon, which is kind of a cool Warhammer variant or open source Warhammer tabletop variant. But I kind of realized and then made the case that if I spent an hour and a half making a 5e character and you killed that character in the first 30 minutes, or honestly the first session, I'd be pissed. I'd be rightly, justifiably pissed. Not because my character died, but because you wasted my time. Like I have now wasted an hour and a half of time that I'm not going to get back. And then I've got to go make another character. That's another hour.
Yeah.
It's another hour and a half. And so like one of the things I've loved about playing Troika and all the BX clones is there's a generator online, Total Party Kill. You can go look it up for generating almost every variant of basic or Dungeons and Dragons character type. Click a button, you get a character. And in Troika, making characters is super fast anyway, so you don't even need it. Also, not to tout our own product, but OSR Beyond recently opened our alpha. We've got 120 users on there now, generating characters in
And it's so much like
Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Old School Essentials, and Troika characters are all supported, and it's fast.
yeah. I
It's
was like when I played like Lamentations the first times, and it was like, okay, filling it out with paper in the book and paper in the book, and it felt like it took ages to make a character.
realistically,
The first one,
Lamentations
at
takes
least.
about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to make a character.
And then when they're so disposable, and you're like, oh, you should have two just in case, and I'm like, that's again like if I'm so guaranteed to lose these 45 minutes of my time that I invested into making that fucking character,
Right.
ugh, I don't. But then like on OSR Beyond, it takes 5, maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, having a tool, having a digital tool chain to help you with character creation can really increase the quality of the player experience for creation so much that they barely notice that the increased deadliness is costing them anything.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the ideal, right? Because then you get the scenario where the GM can present really gritty challenges, really intense stuff. The players can experience that and overcome it or not. And when they don't feel like they have to run back from the starting zone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They don't have to do that long travel of creating a character over again.
Yeah, like
And
because
they can
also, I
hop
mean,
over again.
even D&D Beyond makes 5e characters easier to make quickly, right?
It used to.
Fair,
Jeez.
fair.
Nothing against D&D Beyond. I think it's an amazing tool. But like the more options that have come out
That's
from
just-
Wizards of the Coast,
There's so many options.
it's
now.
insane. Like as a GM who I like to focus on player happiness. That's my my go-to. And so when a player comes on and they want to pick from the whole suite, I'm like, yeah, sure, I've got the whole suite. Go nuts. But now I'm almost like, man, I should really just pare it down to the things that I think are the funnest,
Yeah.
and like expose those, because I can't even get through all those lists of things anymore and make a reasonable 5e character at any time at all. I've got to sit and read and
And that's where like it's even expanded to the point of like if you say you want to have a one class game for like if we're just gonna have a mono class game,
those are fun.
you basically still get several different classes because of all the subclasses and right.
That's true. That's true.
And just different builds that you can do with it. So it's like,
Abjure or warrior or
if you're gonna do wizards especially, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like you're gonna have a bunch of different schools of magic and everyone's gonna pick different spells and you're all wizards, but none of you are the same wizard.
Yeah.
All wizards group? All wizards?
I'd play another all wizards game. That was a fun game.
That was a good one. Yeah, I think oh geez. Like it's interesting with those all the same class games, or like, you're trying to narrow the options down or whatever. A lot of people, I feel like, think of character creation as kind of the fourth pillar of fifth edition a little bit, where it's like that's the game you play at home before you show up. It's like DMing for players a little bit. Where it's like, oh, I'm gonna fine tune my character sheet that has all these little wibbles and wobbles and different quantity. You can kind of tweak it, and between sessions, you're looking over it, going, "Oh, what am I going to take next level?" And it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or I think, but it does change the game. It does make it so that when those fifth edition characters die, like, oh man, like I couldn't tell you how much time I've spent on Alhazarad, just backstorying or planning or character designing, or it's just like to lose him at this point would be.
Didn't you just kill him?
Sorry?
Didn't you just kill him?
I did just kill him, yeah. But he's fine. He's in a ring. He's in a ring of.
This is a soul stone, right? So,
the mind shielding ring that he got in the previous adventure, and we were just like, we got to get Alhazarad's soul trapped in that mind shielding ring so that he can talk to whoever puts it on.
Yeah, well, it's nice as a GM now, because I'm hoping, I'm not sure who has the ring, if it's Jack or Adora, our bard or our warlock rogue, but one of them, next time we play Pixels and Pagans, is definitely going to have Alhazred just being like, "Throw him off a roof. He was rude to you."
Yeah, I can't wait for that. I would really love to play some more Pixels and Pagans soon, please.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's schedule that soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, I was gonna do I'm gonna do a one shot for when Austin and Chelsea get back here. For you guys. I was thinking it could be a Pixels and Pagans unrelated to this, but make some first level baby characters for it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Sure.
Should we continue with 5e, or do you want to run some Pixels and Pagans with a different system?
I am so not familiar with other systems.
Fine.
Um, yeah, I don't yet feel confident to run any of the other ones really, but
That's totally fine. Cool. Yeah, no, that
yeah.
sounds awesome. All right, cool. Well, I think we are just about out of time. I think the last topic that we wanted to tackle was playing your values, which I think is kind of like a good cover for kind of everything we've talked about, right? It's everything from our allyship with, for trans rights, and kind of putting our creative energy into things that back things that we believe in, all the way to, ensuring that kids have a safe place to play games together. Um, as a player, taking the responsibility for bringing your contribution to the table and upping everyone's game. Being a great player is kind of about elevating the rest of the table, and I think that that's such a cool thing. But to do that, you kind of have to be on the same page, as Austin keeps pointing out, and a lot of that comes down to having shared values at some level, and playing to those values. I think is one of the things that, if I had to guess what was consistently there across all successful tables of a role playing game, it's that the majority or the entirety of the table has largely shared values. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
I mean that like even when it comes to play style, right? It's like so you've got your values when it comes to like, oh, I like a game that's very silly and role play focused, and other people that I've played with have like preferred a more combat heavy serious game, and then we kind of clash on at least one of us is not really having the most fun we could be having. Um but that said, like, values in character, right? Like if you've got somebody who's like, oh, even if you're like, I'm not like I as a person have very good values, but I want to play a character who doesn't, fine, right? But if you have that character doing things that are absolutely atrocious, it's gonna make some of the other people be like uncomfortable at your table, right? It's like,
right.
um, finding a way where you can be like, yeah, we all have a similar value about like how are we gonna approach and deal with problems in game, right?
Yeah, this is actually really interesting. I think like when I so there's been a lot of discussion in the RPG space about safety tools for years now, and rightly so. And I think more recently, the conversations that I've been hearing have been from old old school players, grognards, who are decrying it. They're saying it does not belong in the game. It is for snowflakes and blah blah blah. And I think what these people are missing, the argument they're making that is amiss, is that if they played at a table with a bunch of people who didn't share their values, they would find themselves in uncomfortable situations where they did not enjoy the game. And having safety tools is about aligning values. It's about setting an expectation and alignment of values. If you can do that, then you're already using safety tools.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're like, how dare these snowflakes bring their X card to the table? Like, you probably shouldn't be playing with those people because you don't share their values about being able to play safely.
Well, and that's
You have values about playing unsafely. So go play unsafely with your unsafe people. That's okay. That's your safety tool.
Yeah.
That's your aligned value.
absolutely.
Well,
And it's like, you
I
have
think
sorry. Go ahead, Austin.
sorry if you don't mind. I think that's kind of speaks to like a fundamental change that's happened in the hobby. Like 25 years ago when I started playing D&D, if you were playing D&D, it meant that you were hiding in the back of the library at school with your four nerd friends and you were playing together. Nowadays, it means you're often with strangers at a flagship store or online, or the idea as it's become more mainstream, the idea that you might play with people that you don't know inside out, like has become a very real thing. And I think in those situations, you know, like how many times have we, the three of us, used safety cards or safety tools at our table?
I would
Maybe
say
once.
zero.
The
Yeah,
first time. Yeah, I think the
I've
first
done
time we
lines
sat
and
down.
I've done lines and veils at almost all my
we say
zeros,
what they
session zeros.
are. I mean,
Yeah.
but I've never
Yeah.
come in a place where where someone's been like, hey, that you just crossed a line. Actually, I need to like stop session so we can talk. It's just like, oh no, that's
What
happened once.
Yeah.
Um,
What I mean to say is like when it's like the three of us and like Chelsea and like our friends, like, there doesn't have to be a big talk about like, oh, like I'm arachnophobic, Gabe doesn't like violence against kids. Like we know that stuff. You know what I mean? I know
Right.
that because we're all friends. But when you sit down with strangers, you don't know that stuff. And like I was playing a Lamentations game the other day where somebody was like, oh, we kidnapped this goblin. Let's enslave him. And I was just like, oh, like, ugh, like
yeah,
don't. And that was fine at the table. I was just like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And that was like we moved on. That was
Right.
but it is when you're, the game has changed.
Yeah.
And it is at its heart, I think, a game about cooperation. That's the action at the table is you're cooperating to achieve a goal. That's the action as DMs and players, you're cooperating to have a good time. Uh, but it's so funny to me that like some things are situational, right? Like there are when you're cooperating with strangers, good to set a pattern first. If you're cooperating with your friends, you do that every time you hang out and have fun together. So I don't know if that's the same,
yeah.
like,
Well,
yeah,
and like, I mean, even
friendship
players
is the
who
same.
don't have many lines and veils can still use the like. It's not going to hurt you to go around the table and be like, yeah, does anybody have any lines or veils? Is there anything that you don't want to have described graphically or anything you just don't want to have described at all?
Right.
And sometimes people might find that, like, if they really think about it, yes, there is. Sometimes they'll just say, no, not, I don't have any. And then it's just because they have that unspoken bond that's like, okay, they all know that, like, they don't want to do a romantic sex scene with their DM. And so they just don't bring it up as a veil, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then that's just sort of an automatic veil that they've been doing for years and haven't realized that they're using a veil.
Yeah.
Most tables don't graphically describe sex scenes to each other.
There's actually it's interesting that we're talking about this because I think there was another thing that happened recently was some book that was being critiqued online for including discussion about bleed, which is emotional bleed between the player and the character. And I think that's something that often isn't talked about as a line or a veil, but the reality is like deeply emotional content, especially sad or morose content, can really affect people. And so being ready to deal with that in a group of strangers is actually something like it's something I would be hard pressed to find a grognard who's willing to sit there and cry at the table with a bunch of strangers. So while there is the statement, oh, I don't need safety tools, I don't need that. I will make you cry, motherfucker. You will need safety tools one time.
Yeah. If you tell me you don't need safety tools, I'm going to find a button.
We'll find a button. We're going to sit on it. We're going to get you crying.
But, one that more of a, like, I'll hit you in the feels with, like, sad puppies, right? That's probably not your thing, but
I've pulled jerked some tears doing some pretty, I would say, I like sweet tears. So I like tears where the table is like crying, but it's because it's a sweet moment.
Because it's something so cute, yeah, or just
not just cute, but like deeply sweet, like deeply like a mother and her child reunited, stuff like that, where it's like danger was averted and something amazing happened. Anyway, I think we're completely way out of time now. I want to thank everybody who has stayed with us and listened to us. If you like what we do, please feel free to purchase any of our stuff on WatcherDM.com, itch.io, DriveThruRPG, or you can come and join our Patreon, where you can get early access to the podcast with full video and a bunch of stuff that is exclusively only on Patreon, including I'm doing a bunch of index card art right now. There's so we are reintroducing the encountergrams with additionally fleshed out, fun, gooey stuff in it. So there's gonna be some fresh art and some cool encounter ideas there. But yeah, come check us out on patreon.com/WatcherDM. And otherwise, please subscribe to this and our other video channel on YouTube if you're not on YouTube. If you want video access to this, you're probably gonna have to check it out on Spotify, unfortunately. But thank you so much for joining us, Andrew and Austin. Thanks for coming as always.
Good to see you, friends.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
No, I'd love to come.
as we always say, show them the cup. Show them the back of the cup.
What?
Stay weird.
Hey, weird.